Hello there everyone, my name is David Luchford and welcome to lesson 22 of my Ancient Greek course. Lesson 22 is titled Third Declension Practice Exercises Part 1, and that is because today, as you may be able to guess, we are going to be doing some practice with the third declension. But it's only part 1 because we have only covered part of the third declension so far. In particular, we've only learned about how each third declension noun has what we call an oblique stem, and we learned what that oblique stem is. And then in addition to that, we've learned the basic sets of endings for third declension nouns. We saw that there was one for masculine and feminine third declension nouns and one for neuter third declension nouns. And on top of that, we've learned about the subgroups 3a and 3b. We learned how to recognise that a noun is a 3a noun or a 3b noun, and we learned how 3a and 3b nouns decline. So, we're going to be doing practice with those things today. But before we start said practice, I would like us to have a look at my virtual set of shelves. Well, would you look at that? What a beautiful sight. Since my last video, 3 new amphorae have been bought for me by 3 different and very kind individuals. The first of those individuals was KW. Now, KW actually bought me 3 amphorae in the past. So, KW, you are the first person to buy me an amphora or amphorae on 2 separate occasions. And for that, KW, I want to say, although I do not know what KW stands for, right now I want to say that it stands for kind and wonderful, because you are a kind and wonderful person, KW. Thank you very much for your continued support, KW. The second person to buy me an amphora since my last video was Anna, the astonishing Anna. And you can see that Anna has actually added a smiley face to her label, which I think is a wonderful thing, because the smiley face helps to spread joy wherever it goes. You know, it brings a smile to all of our faces. So Anna, thank you very much for your support, and thank you for bringing additional joy to the set of shelves with the smiley face. And the third person to buy me an amphora since my last video was someone. Now, this individual put their name as someone, so I presume they wish to remain anonymous, but they didn't ask for an amphora not to be added to these shelves. So to someone, I wish to say thank you very much for your support and for supporting the channel. You, someone, are spectacular. Thank you very much to all of my supporters, both the new ones and those who supported me in the past. Now you can see that there are, I would say, about 3 spaces left on the bottom shelf of my virtual set of shelves. So if you would like to add a virtual amphora or amphorae to this virtual set of shelves, then you can do so by going to www.buymeacoffee.com/learnancientgreek. The link is in the description below, and it's also in the info box in the corner of the video. But having looked at my beautiful virtual set of shelves, let us now do some practice with the third declension. And let's start with exercise 1, identifying nouns' oblique stems. As you may be able to guess from the title, in this exercise you have to state the oblique stem of each of the third declension nouns on the screen. You have all of these nouns in their dictionary form, and I can tell you that the first 3 nouns are 3a nouns. We know that because their genitive singular ends in os and they're either masculine or feminine, depending on the noun. And the 4th and 5th nouns are 3b nouns. We know that because their genitive singular ends in os and they are neuter. So in this exercise, we're not classifying them, since I've already told you they're subgroups, but rather, you have to state the oblique stem of each of these nouns. If you've watched my previous video, you will know how to do this. Namely, by dropping the os from the full genitive singular form. But you're only given the full genitive singular form some of the time. A lot of the time, you're given the end of the genitive singular form, consisting of a bit of the oblique stem and the ending os. And from that, you have to work out what the full genitive singular form is, and then drop the ending os from it to get the oblique stem. Anyway, you'll have enough information in the second form to work out what the full genitive singular form would be, and then to work out the oblique stem by dropping the os from the full genitive singular form. So please now pause the video and have a go at stating the oblique stems of these third declension nouns. Okay, let's now go through the answers. The first noun we had was a 3A noun, and it was aspis, meaning shield. You should have stated that the oblique stem of aspis is aspid. We know that it's aspid because here we have the last part of the genitive singular form. We don't have the full genitive singular form, but we have idos. So we know that the oblique stem is going to end in id, and here we have the genitive singular ending, the case ending, os. And given that the unique nominative singular form is aspis, we can work out that the full genitive singular form is going to be aspidos. And if we drop that ending os, if we get rid of the case ending, we're left with aspid. The second one was the noun rhetor, which means orator or politician. And you should have put that the oblique stem of rhetor is rhetor. And we know that the oblique stem is rhetor because of the fact that we're given oros here. We're given the last part of the genitive singular form rather than the full genitive singular form, because we're expected to work out that since the nominative singular form is rhetor, the full genitive singular form would be rhetoros. The rhet part would be the same, but instead of having or, it would have oros. And then to get the oblique stem from that full genitive singular form, we drop the os, which leaves us with rhetor. And I should note that this oblique stem is quite like the unique nominative singular form, except instead of omega, it has omicron. So it has a short O sound rather than a long O sound. This is rhetor, and this is rhetor. The third noun that we had was keir, and keir means hand. And you should have put that the oblique stem of this noun is keir. We know that this must be the oblique stem because here we're given the full genitive singular form, and we can just drop the ending os from that form, which leaves us with keir. So this noun uses the entire nominative singular form as its oblique stem. So that's what you should have got for these first three, which, as I say, are all 3A nouns. Let's now go on to number 4. Number 4 is pors, which means light. You should have put that the oblique stem of this noun is port. We know it's port because here we have the full genitive singular form, and all we need to do is drop the ending os, which leaves us with port, the oblique stem. Before we move on, I would just like to note that there is also a masculine 3A noun, pors, with the oblique stem port, and this noun means man or mortal. So please do note that there are two words, pors, and the neuter one, which is a 3B noun, means light, while the masculine one, which is a 3A noun, means man or mortal. Finally, for number 5 we have stoma, which means mouth. You should have put that the oblique stem of this noun is stomat. We know that it is stomat because here we have the last part of the genitive singular form. We have atos. And given that the nominative singular form is stoma, we need to infer that the full genitive singular form is stomatos. And therefore, the oblique stem must be stomat. We can get that just by dropping the os from the full genitive singular form. And we could have known that the oblique stem is stomat just by knowing that this is a 3B noun which ends in ma, as most 3B nouns do, and knowing that the oblique stem of a 3B noun which ends in ma will be one that ends in mat, which we see here with stomat. And please note that these last two nouns, pors and stoma, are both 3B nouns. I hope that you had success in identifying the oblique stems of the nouns on the screen. Let's now go on to exercise 2, which is a classification exercise. You now know the drill if you've watched my other videos, because here you have to state which subgroup of a declension each of these nouns belongs to. Now, the nouns on the screen may belong to any of the 3 declensions. So you do need to know how to recognise whether a noun is a 1A noun, 1B noun, 1C noun or 1D noun, or a 2A noun or a 2B noun, or now, with the third declension, a 3A noun or a 3B noun. Those are all of the possibilities for this exercise. So be ready to identify a noun as belonging to any of those subgroups. And you know how to do this if you've watched my other videos. So please now pause the video and, using the methods I have taught you, state which subgroup of a declension each of these nouns belongs to. Okay, to go through the answers, the first noun is daimon. Daimon means god, spirit, or goddess. It means goddess if it's feminine, but if it's masculine, it means god or spirit. You should have put that daimon is a 3A noun. We know that daimon is a 3A noun because its genitive singular ends in os, and it is either masculine or feminine. Moreover, I didn't ask you to recognise the oblique stem, but for your reference, the oblique stem would be daimon. We can get that by working out the full genitive singular form, which would be daimonos, and then dropping the os. The second one, barbaros, means barbarian or foreigner, and you should have put that it is a 2A noun. We know this because of the fact that it ends in os in the nominative singular and ou in the genitive singular. The third one, Platon, means Plato. It is in fact a proper name. We can tell that by the fact that it's got a capital pi at the start. You should have put that Platon is a 3A noun. We know it's a 3A noun because its genitive singular ends in os and it is masculine. And for your reference, the oblique stem of Platon would be Platon. We know this because we can work out the full genitive singular form from the last part of it here. The last part of it is ornos, and given that the nominative singular is Platon, we can work out that the genitive singular would therefore be Platonos. And so, if we drop the os, we know that the oblique stem is just Platon. It uses the full nominative singular as the oblique stem. So in the accusative, for example, it would be Platona. And you obviously wouldn't have a plural for it because it is a person's name. There's only one Plato. And he is perhaps the greatest philosopher of all time. The fourth one is soma, which means body. You should have put that soma is a 3B noun. We know it's a 3B noun because its genitive singular ends in os and it is neuter. And like most 3B nouns, it ends in ma in the nominative singular and its oblique stem ends in mat. We can work that out by realising that the full genitive singular form would be somatos, and therefore the oblique stem would be somat. But if we know that it's a 3B noun and that it ends in ma in the nominative singular, we know from that that the oblique stem will end in mat. The fifth one, kormer, means village, and it is a 1A noun. We know that it is a 1A noun because it ends in er in the nominative singular and ers in the genitive singular. Number 6, pur, means fire, and it is a 3B noun. We know that it's a 3B noun because its genitive singular ends in os and it is neuter. And we have the full genitive singular form here, so to get the oblique stem, all we would have to do is drop the ending os, which leaves us with pure. So the oblique stem is the whole nominative singular form, but without the circumflex. I've put the circumflex there to let you know that it's a long upsilon in the nominative/accusative singular. I don't mean to say that I've added the circumflex. The circumflex is there on the word. I mean to say that I've included it when I usually don't, unless there's been a contraction. Because in this case, it's useful to know that it's a long upsilon. So that's why I've included it rather than excluded it this time. Number 7 is terraporn, and it means servant. You should have put that terraporn is a 3a noun. We know that it's a 3a noun because of the fact that its genitive singular ends in os and it is masculine. Moreover, we know the oblique stem would be terrapont because here we're given ontos, and given that the nominative singular form is terraporn, we can work out that the full genitive singular form would be terrapontos, and therefore the oblique stem would be terrapont. Number 8, Hellas, means Greece. Here we have a proper name. In this case, it's the name of a place. Because it's a proper name, we have a capital epsilon here. Hellas is a 3a noun. We know that it's a 3a noun because its genitive singular ends in os and it is feminine. And for your reference, the oblique stem would be Hellad. We know that because here we're given ados, which is the last part of the genitive singular form, and given that the nominative singular is Hellas, we can infer that the full genitive singular form would be Hellados, and therefore the oblique stem is Hellad. So I hope that you successfully identified these nouns subgroups. Now, here are all of the new nouns that we have just met, organised by their subgroup and organised alphabetically within their subgroups. I'm going to quickly give some advice about remembering some of these nouns. In particular, I shall be talking about how to link them to English to remember their meanings. But the first one, cormer, I'm not aware of any English derivatives for. So, if you know an English derivative from cormer, meaning village, then post it below, okay? Because I'm sure it'll be useful to other people. But I'm sure we can all think of a derivative from the second word, barbaros, meaning barbarian or foreigner, since it gives us the word barbarian. So that one should be easy enough to remember. Now, I'm not immediately aware of any derivatives from aspis, meaning shield, so if you know some, post them below. Aspis can also mean asp, as in the snake. And so we get the word asp from aspis, meaning snake, but I'm not sure about any derivatives that are to do with shields. If you know some, let me know in the comments below. However, the noun daimon, meaning god, spirit, or goddess, if you transliterated it, would be daimon. Now, it does give us the word demon. And in fact, in the New Testament, daimon does mean demon. But in classical Greek, daimon meant a god or spirit, or a goddess if the noun was feminine. But it did later come to mean demon. So, if you wanted to, you could link it to the word demon, but then make yourself remember, no, in classical Greek it does not mean demon, it means god, spirit, or goddess. But if you're reading the New Testament, then it will be able to mean demon. The next noun is Hellas, meaning Greece. You may know that in English we have the word Hellenistic to refer to a certain period of Greek history. The Hellen part comes from Hellas, meaning Greece. There's also the adjective Hellenic, which means to do with ancient Greece. The noun terraporn means servant, and for one thing, it looks like the masculine version of terrapaina. A therapina is a maidservant. A therapon, which is a masculine third declension noun, is a servant. And both of those words are related to the Greek verb therapeuo, which means to serve or to look after or care for. And that's what servants do. And that verb, therapeuo, gives us the word therapy in English. The noun Platon should be easy enough to remember, because if you transliterated it, you would get Platon. English often drops the final letter or two of Greek names. However, I know that some other languages do retain those letters. So I'll be interested to know, if you speak another language, whether Platon looks more like Platon or more like Plato in your language. You can let me know in the comments below. The next one is the noun rhetor, which means orator or politician. Now, if you transliterated rhetor, you would get rhetor, and we do in fact have an English word rhetor to mean an orator, somebody that practices rhetoric. And you can see, therefore, that rhetor, meaning orator or politician, is related to the word rhetoric. The next one is ker. Ker means hand, and if we transliterated it, we would get kair, at least if we transliterated it in one way. There are numerous ways, but I've transliterated it in the way that reveals some derivatives. I should say there are numerous ways, because that diphthong A can be transliterated either as I or EI. Here I've transliterated it as I to show that we get the word chiropractor from this word. A chiropractor is somebody who uses their hands to alleviate like muscle and joint and bone pain. By the way, that's me being a chiropractor right there. That gesture, that's my chiropractor gesture. I looked more like a cat doing its thing, you know, I think. But anyway, let's go on to the next noun, please. The next word is pure, which means fire. If we transliterated it, we would get pyre. And you can see, therefore, that we get words like pyromaniac from pure. The next word is stoma, which means mouth. Now, I'm not a biologist, okay? But I remember GCSE biology, and I know that you have to learn about something called stomata. And stomata is identical to the nominative or accusative plural form of stoma, which would be stomata, using the oblique stem stomat. So stomata are these small pores that leaves have, through which gases pass. Maybe a biologist could go into more detail here, okay? But there are these pores that leaves have, and they're called stomata. One of them is called a stoma. In Greek, it will be stoma. And I guess they're like mouths, you know, they're like the mouths. They're like microscopic little mouths on the leaf that suck in the gases. Anyway, let's look at the next noun. The next noun is soma, which means body. If we transliterated the oblique stem, we would get somat. And you may know the adjective somatic, which means to do with the body. You may alternatively know the horror game Soma. It is an excellent game, not a sponsor, just one of my favourite games from when I used to play video games a lot. The title of the game is a transliteration of the Greek word soma, meaning body, because the game deals with the philosophical issue of the relationship between the mind and the body. Finally, the last noun is pors, meaning light. You can see that the oblique stem is port. If we transliterated it, we would get phot. And you can see from that we get words like photo and photon. Photo is short for photograph. Photograph is etymologically a light drawing or a light picture because it's a picture that's taken using light. And a photon is like a light particle, isn't it? Once again, I'm not a scientist. If you know what a photon is in more detail, you can share it below. But anyway, I hope that those derivatives help you to remember the meanings of many of these words. If you know any other derivatives that you would like to share below, then please do so. Especially if you know derivatives for those that I was not able to mention a derivative for, like quormer and aspis. In fact, it was just those two, quormer and aspis. I shall be giving some general tips about learning Greek vocabulary in a future video. But for now, please pause the video and make sure that you've noted down all of these nouns in the form that I've put them on the screen. I've given you the oblique stems of third declension nouns in brackets for your reference. Now, before we go on to the next exercise, here is a collection of third declension nouns which we have already met. You may wish to pause the video and make sure you're aware of the meanings and the subgroups of the nouns on the screen because they may come up in the next exercises. Okay, let's now go on to exercise 3, which is a parsing exercise. Here you have 10 third declension nouns on the screen. Each of them is either a 3A noun or a 3B noun. And you need to state the gender, case, and number of each of these nouns. So for example, you might wish to say masculine nominative singular, and if you wanted to say that, you could abbreviate it as M nom S. Now please be aware that there are multiple possibilities for some of these nouns. That is either because the gender is ambiguous or the case is ambiguous. Either way, I would like you to state all of the possibilities that you can think of. And please remember that in Greek, the vocative plural is always visually identical to the nominative plural. So if you come across a noun and you recognise it as being nominative plural, then you should also mention that it could be vocative plural. So please now pause the video and state the gender, case, and number of each of these nouns. Okay, let's now go through the answers. The first one is paidos. Paidos is masculine or feminine genitive singular. We know that it's either masculine or feminine by having learned that pais is a common gender noun and realising that since we have no context and no definite article here, it could be either. And we know that it's genitive singular by recognising that os is the genitive singular ending for 3A nouns. The second one, aspida, is feminine accusative singular. We know that it's feminine by having learned that aspis is a feminine noun. We know that because in its dictionary form it has the definite article hair with it. And we know that it's accusative singular by knowing that it's a 3A noun, and for 3A nouns, the ending a is the accusative singular ending. The third one, pragmata, is neuter, nominative or accusative plural. We know it's neuter either by knowing that it's a 3B noun and knowing that all 3B nouns are neuter, or by having learned its gender individually. And we know that it's either nominative or accusative plural by recognising that the ending a, when it's added onto the oblique stem of a 3B noun, is the nominative or accusative plural ending. In principle, it could also be neuter vocative plural, since the nominative plural and the vocative plural are always visually identical. But I'm not sure how often you're actually going to be addressing things, matters, affairs, or deeds. Number 4, Andres is masculine nominative or vocative plural. I've said that in Greek, the vocative plural is always visually identical to the nominative plural. And other times I've said don't worry about not mentioning it in an exercise of this sort. I've said that when it hasn't been realistically possible for that noun to be vocative plural. However, here you do see Andres used in the vocative. It is a realistic possibility. So I hope that you put that it's either nominative or vocative plural. We know that Andres is masculine by having learned its gender individually, and we know that it's either nominative or vocative plural by knowing that S is the nominative and vocative plural ending for 3A nouns. I know I taught that it was the nominative plural ending in the last lesson, but as I didn't state a separate vocative form, you should have assumed that the nominative is the same. And I have mentioned before that in Greek, the vocative plural is always identical visually to the nominative plural. Number 5 is the noun retorsin, and it is masculine dative plural. We know that it's masculine dative plural by having learned that retor is a masculine noun, and by knowing that the ending sin is the dative plural ending for 3A nouns. Number 6 is the noun keiri. You should have put that it is feminine dative singular. We know that it's feminine by having learned that individually, and we know that it's dative singular because if you have the ending iota added onto the oblique stem of a 3A noun, then that 3A noun is in the dative singular. Number 7 is pi. Pi is masculine or feminine vocative singular. We know that it could be the masculine or feminine by knowing that pais is a common gender noun, and we know that it's vocative singular either by having learned that form individually, I did show it in the last video, or alternatively by assuming that since it's a shorter version of the nominative singular, it is vocative singular. Since the vocative singular is often a shortened version of the nominative singular, that unique nominative singular form that third declension nouns have. Number 8 is gynaikon. Gynaikon is feminine genitive plural. We know it's feminine by having learned the gender of gyna individually, and we know it's genitive plural since we know that the ending on, if it's added onto the oblique stem of a 3A noun, is the genitive plural ending. Number 9 is daimonas, and it is masculine or feminine accusative plural. We know that it's masculine or feminine by having learned that it is a common gender noun, and we know that it's accusative plural by knowing that for 3A nouns, if you have the ending us added onto the oblique stem, then that is the accusative plural form. And finally, number 10, pure, is neuter, nominative or accusative singular. We know it's neuter either by knowing that it's a 3B noun and all 3B nouns are neuter, or by having learned its gender individually. And we know that it's nominative or accusative singular by knowing that the unique nominative or accusative singular form of this noun is pure. We know that because that's the first form we're given in the dictionary entry. Now it could hypothetically be neuter vocative singular, but I'm not sure how often you're going to be addressing a fire, so don't worry if you didn't note that possibility. So this is what you should have stated for the gender, case and number of each of these nouns. Let's now go on to the fourth and final exercise, which is a translation exercise. Here you have 6 Greek sentences, some of which have a word in them that is underlined. If a word is underlined, you can find its meaning in the word bank, where it will be in its dictionary form. Now, one thing to note is that number 3 is actually a question, and that the ancient Greek question mark is a semicolon. So when you're reading a Greek text, you won't see a question mark, you will see a semicolon. A second thing to note is that in Greek, proper names often have the definite article. For reference, a proper name is a name of a person or a place, or a group of people. Proper names in Greek, as in English, have capital letters at the start of them. And in Greek, you will often see the definite article before proper names, even when a proper name is the name of one particular person. This is one of many places where the Greek definite article differs from our word the. Because in English, we don't say the David, but in Greek, they would typically put the definite article before a proper name, like David. So do look out for that. Even though the definite article is before a proper name, you don't translate it using the word the. You just translate the proper name on its own. At least, that's what we typically do when the proper name is the name of an individual person or place. However, if the proper name is the name of a group of people, then we can say the in English. For example, we would say the Spartans. But if the proper name is the name of an individual person or place, we typically have to omit the word the from our translation. And another thing to note is here we have the preposition en, which as you can see in the word bank means in or on. Note that the word that goes after en and the word that it applies to goes in the dative case. So the thing that something is in or on is in the dative case. So if you wanted to say in the house, you would put the house in the dative case. And as a final reminder, please remember to translate singular nouns that do not have the definite article by putting a before them, and to translate plural nouns that do not have the definite article simply by omitting the word the. If you have a plural noun without the definite article, you don't need to say the, you can just translate the noun on its own. So bearing those things in mind, please now pause the video and translate these sentences into English. Let's now go through these sentences. The first one is Haigunaikes horosin andra. You should have translated this sentence as the women see a man. We know that it means this because the first phrase, Haigunaikes, is nominative plural. And so the women must be the subject. They must be doing the action of the verb. And we know that Haigunaikes is nominative plural either by recognising that the definite article is feminine nominative plural, and so the noun must also be feminine nominative plural, or by recognising that the ending s at the end of gunaikes is the nominative plural ending for 3a nouns that's added on to the oblique stem. So the women are the subject, and then we have the verb horosin. Horosin is hora plus usin, so it is they see. Here it's in its contracted form. But here we know who that they refers to. We know that it's the women. Since the women are in the nominative, they're the subject. So the women see, and then we just have andra. Now we don't have a definite article before it, so we would just say a man rather than the man. And we know that this man must be the direct object. He must be the person that the women are seeing, because of the fact that andra is accusative singular. We know it's accusative singular by knowing that for 3a nouns, if you have the ending a added on to the oblique stem, then it's in the accusative singular. So this is the accusative singular form of aner. And here is a nice visual illustration of that sentence. Haigunaikes horosin andra. The women see a man. Perhaps it's a bit of an overstatement in the case of this illustration, since they probably would have seen him before reaching that point, but anyway, let's not overanalyze the image, okay? Let's go on to number 2. Number 2 is Oi moi, aspidas uk echomen. You should have translated this one as, oh no, we do not have shields. Or alternatively, you could say we are not holding shields, since echo is either have or hold. We know that it means this because oi moi means oh no, as we can see from the word bank. Now this is an expression that is a favourite of many students of ancient Greek, and it's used to express despair or anguish or sorrow. It's used to express a variety of emotions. Literally it means woe to me. We could say woe is me. It's basically like despairing that you're in a bad situation. You're expressing pity for yourself. But we can translate it as oh no, especially in this context. So we've got oh no, and although there's a comma in Greek, you have to get used to the fact that sometimes in English it's more appropriate to use different punctuation. So in this instance we have a comma, but since this is an exclamation, we can put an exclamation mark here and start a new sentence. So we said, oh no, we do not have shields. We know that this second part means we do not have shields because here we have aspidas. Aspidas comes from aspis. We know that aspis means shield, but here it's aspidas. Now, we've got the oblique stem plus the ending us. And if you have a 3a nouns oblique stem with the ending us, then it is in the accusative plural. That's what we've got here. And we don't have a definite article, so we can just say shields, and therefore shields are the direct object. After that point, we get the simple negative, uk, which means not, and we have the verb echomen, which is we have or we hold. We know that we are doing the action from the ending omen. So this was, oh no, we do not have or hold shields. Maybe this sentence is being said by a Greek warrior who is in battle and he sees a barrage of arrows flying towards them and he says, oi moi, aspidas uk echomen. Anyway, let's go on to number 3. Number 3 is diati gunaiksin ulegeis. Now you should have translated this one as, why do you not speak to women? We know that it means this because diati is a combination of two words which means why. We shall understand in greater depth exactly how it means why in the future, but for now just remember that diati means why. Then we have gunaiksin. Gunaiksin is from guner. We know guner means woman, but here it's gunaiksin. We should recognise here that we did have the ending sin, but it's been added on to the oblique stem, gunaik, and the kappa and sigma have combined to form xi. So we know that gunaiksin is dative plural, since it's using the dative plural ending sin. Sin is the dative plural ending for 3a nouns. And we don't have any definite articles, so we can just say women in general. And since it's dative plural, we would say 2 women or 4 women. And we don't have any definite articles, so we wouldn't say to the women, we'll just say 2 women. But we need the rest of the sentence for it to make sense, because so far we've just got why, 2 or 4 women, and here we have ou leges. Ou is the simple negative, meaning not, and leges is you speak. We know it's you that's doing the action from the ending ace. In particular, it's you singular, where the you is just one person. So we've got why do you not speak, and then what's more appropriate, 2 women or 4 women? It's most probably 2 women. So why do you not speak to women? Maybe this is a guy asking another guy why he does not speak to women. Maybe he's gynophobic. That's another word we get from the ancient Greek word gyner. Gynophobia is the fear of women. Let's go on to number 4. Number 4 is ta biblia tu Platonos ae anagignoskor. You should have translated this one as, I always read Plato's books. We know that it means this because ta biblia comes from the noun biblion, which means book. And ta biblia is either nominative or accusative plural. We know this either from the definite article, which is neuter, nominative or accusative plural, or from the ending a. We know that for 2b nouns, like biblion, the ending a is nominative or accusative plural. So before we've looked at the rest of the sentence, we know that this is either nominative or accusative plural, and it says the books. Next we have tou platonos. Now I said that we often have the definite article with proper names in Greek, which we do here. We know it's a proper name because of the capital pi. But when the proper name is just one person, we leave it out of our translation because we don't say the Plato in English, we would just say Plato. Typically, this also applies when we find the name of a place with the definite article before it in Greek, as we shall see in the next sentence. But for now, let's go back to tou platonos. But both tou and the ending os let us know that this phrase is genitive singular. And so this must literally mean of Plato. So far we've got the books of Plato. And at the end we have ra, which means always, and the verb anagignoskor. We can see in the word bank that anagignoskor means read, and here it is in the or form, which is the I form in the present indicative active. So the subject of the sentence is I, and therefore ta biblia must be accusative. It can't be nominative because I am the subject, and therefore we would translate this sentence as follows. I always read, literally, the books of Plato. We say of because it's a genitive noun. But we can reword that into more natural English and say, I always read Plato's books. Number 5 is ten helada pilumen. You should have translated this one as, we love Greece, or we like Greece. We know that it means this because here we have ten helada, which is the noun Greece in the accusative singular. We know it's got to be singular since there's only one Greece, but we know it's accusative singular since we know it's a 3a noun, and here we have the oblique stem plus the ending a, which is the accusative singular ending for 3a nouns. We do have the definite article here. I did say that the definite article is often used with proper names in Greek, and it's even used with proper names when those names are the names of individual people or places. But if the proper name is an individual person or place, then we would leave it out of our translation in English. Most of the time at least, but there are some exceptions. For example, with the names of rivers, we say the, as in the Nile or the Styx. So we've got Greece here, and it's in the accusative, and then we have the verb pilumen. Pilumen comes from the verb pileo, which is the verb to love or like. Here it's pile plus the ending omen. Omen is the we ending, so we know it's we love or we like Greece. Here it's in the contracted form pilumen. Pile plus omen makes pilumen. Since Greece is the accusative, it's the direct object of our love. The thing that we love is Greece. The final one is Soma en toi hudati hot herapon heurisque. You should have translated this one as the servant finds a body in the water. Not a nice sentence, but that's how we should have translated it. We know that it means this because here we have soma. We know that soma is the unique nominative / accusative singular form of the noun soma, meaning body. We don't have a definite article before it, so we know that this is a body, but right now we don't know whether it's nominative or accusative. So let's look at the rest of the sentence. We then have en toi hudati. en is a preposition meaning in or on, and it governs the dative case. That means that the noun that comes after it goes in the dative case. The thing that something is in or on will immediately follow that preposition en, and it will be in the dative case. And here we can see that we've got toi hudati. Since it follows en, it must be in the dative case, but we know it's in the dative by knowing our forms of the definite article and recognising that this is neuter dative singular. Here it's got to be neuter since the noun that follows it is neuter, so it's neuter rather than masculine. And we know that hudati is the dative singular form of the noun hudor, meaning water, by knowing that when you have the ending iota added onto the oblique stem of a 3b noun, that makes that noun dative singular. Here we do have the definite article, so we would say the water, and we've got the word in before it, so it's in the water. So thus far we've got a body in the water, and then we have ho terapon. Now, we know that terapon means servant, and here it's in its unique nominative singular form, so it must be nominative singular. And it's got the definite article ho before it, which also confirms that it's nominative singular, and because it's there we will say the servant. And we know that the servant, since he's in the nominative singular, must be doing the action. And we find the action in the verb heuriske. Heuriskor is the verb to find. And here it ends in a because he, she or it is doing the action. Since we have a nominative, we know who that he is. We know that it's the servant. So we can now piece the sentence together. We've got the servant finds a body. We now know that this must be in the accusative since we've got a nominative noun here and the verb's only singular. So the servant finds a body in the water. So that concludes our translation exercise. And since that was the last exercise, let us now summarise our learning for lesson 22. In this lesson, we consolidated our knowledge of how to find the oblique stem of a 3a noun or a 3b noun. We consolidated our knowledge of how to recognise that a noun is a 3a noun or a 3b noun. And we also consolidated our knowledge of how to recognise that a noun is a 1a noun or a 2a noun, since we also saw a 1a noun and a 2a noun in that classification activity. In addition, we consolidated our knowledge of how 3a and 3b nouns decline, since we had to recognise which case and number they were in from their endings in that translation activity. Furthermore, we consolidated and even developed our knowledge of how to translate nouns with and without the definite article. I say developed because we learned the new information that the definite article is often used with proper names in Greek, even when those proper names are the names of one person or one place. Greek, for example, would say the Plato a lot of the time. But in English, we don't say the Plato. So we need to omit the from our translation where Greek does that.
And English does not.
Finally, we also met a lot of new words. We met a lot of new nouns. I've put them here for your reference. We also met a new verb, the verb anagignoskor, which means to read, amongst other things. We met a new preposition. We met the word en, which governs the dative, and it means in or on. When I say it governs the dative, to reiterate, I mean that the noun that it applies to, which will immediately follow it, goes in the dative case. We'll learn more about prepositions in a future lesson. We also learned a new question word, our first question word in fact, and really it's two words, but they act as a question word here, and those are diati, meaning why. We also learned that the Greek question mark is a semicolon. And finally, we learned a new expression, namely oi moi, which means oh no, or literally woe to me. You could say woe is me, perhaps. But we don't really say woe is me anymore, so we do need to come up with modern equivalents when we translate it. And one possible candidate is oh no. So you can say oi moi when you're in a situation in which you're despairing and wish to say oh no. But I am not despairing right now. I am very grateful that you have made it to this point in the video. So thank you very much for watching the video. Thank you for following the course in general. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, if you found it useful. And please leave a comment if you have any feedback at all or wish to share any derivatives from the words that we were talking about earlier. If you wish to support the channel financially, then you may go to www.buymeacoffee.com/learn ancient Greek. But for now though, I must say goodbye and I shall see you again next time.